Hi, everybody. Welcome to our 10th episode. This
10?
is 10
Wow.
episodes officially, double digits now. This is Cancer season. So, Kumbi, why don't you tell us about Cancer season?
All right. I feel really well versed in Cancer themes at the moment. So Cancer season, it's the beginning of the summer solstice. Mm-hmm. So it's usually around June 21st. So it's a cardinal water sign, meaning it is like an initiatory, like strong energy into a different element. So that's what cardinal means. And every cardinal sign is introduced by a new season. So as far as like the summer solstice, it's the official beginning of summer. The fall equinox, it's the cardinal air sign of Libra. It's the autumnal equinox, which is the beginning of fall. The winter solstice is Capricorn, which is a cardinal earth sign. So that's kicks off the beginning of winter. And then the spring equinox is Aries sign, which is the cardinal fire sign, which kicks off the beginning of summer. So cardinal signs, just the energy of cardinal signs is very much about just this direct, forceful, initiating, like new beginning, like strong new beginning energy. So when we shift from mutable Gemini, which is an air sign, and mutable meaning like it's the most like least of that element of the different signs in that element. So there's cardinal, there's fixed, and then there's mutable. So we come from this like mutable Gemini, which is very much like kind of wishy-washy back and forth in the mind, lots of stuff in the mind, to this cardinal Cancer, which is a cardinal water sign, which is water represents emotions. Water represents our emotional body. Water represents the power of being fluid. And then Cancer specifically, which is ruled by the moon, which corresponds to our sixth chakra, is about intuition. It's about, there's different things. So the sixth chakra is about intuition, about psychic powers, and about that internal seeing or that ability to be able to see beyond just the physical. Whereas Cancer is also about nurturing, about protection, about very concerned about security, and very much about that kind of going inward, like think about like the crab with the hard shell, like the super, super soft interior. So there's like a feminine, receptive, nurturing energy about Cancer. There's like a real strong emotional energy with Cancer. And so sometimes it can be translated as like, the shadow aspect would be like emotional neediness, over personalizing things, the codependency as far as like, real true, like, boundaryless, like empathy for somebody or for somebody's feelings, which can also translate into like the gift of Cancer, which is an incredible amount of empathy and sensitivity and emotional availability and like being able to connect on that type of like deep internal level. So just like anything, it's like an extreme of either one can be too much. Whereas like really kind of finding the limitations and the freedom within the limitations, like the boundary of, the restriction of over personalization and needing the emotional, attention or satisfaction or, that kind of thing from others, and like really being able to, create that for yourself, finding that balance with other people, but create that for yourself so that you can really find the freedom in that, which is there's so much gift in that if you cannot take it too far. There's so much gift in being empathetic and being sympathetic and being sensitive and being emotional, as long as there's like, some boundaries and some container for it and some, of course, self-awareness.
Yeah.
So that's like, so the end of June through most of July, and it's, it's about watery, emotional, sensitive energy.
Yeah. I love it. I love that it's coming up because I feel like, especially, I don't know, in our culture, I feel like being emotional, being sensitive sometimes has a negative connotation to it.
Right.
So I think it's important to recognize like, I often think about, because I am a very sensitive person myself, even though I don't think I have any Cancer in me, but I just have that sensitivity. And I know that like, I feel like
Everybody has Cancer in them.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Oh.
It's just, it depends on what house it's ruling. I'm going to look it up. Go ahead.
I see. Okay.
Sorry, keep going.
But I think starting to recognize sensitivity as like a superpower is sort of like an ability to feel into people and how they're feeling, like you're talking about the empathy, and not necessarily just thinking like of the mind, where we, put so much attention and focus and like being strong and like intellectual and thinking and having like a, sort of a wall up or just being stoic almost at times. I think this, focus on emotions, focus on sensitivity, and the importance of it is really, really great. That being said, this was an interesting challenge, but it kind of brought up a lot for me when I was reading it, because it's asking a lot.
Well, okay, so I am looking at your chart right now, and you do have a personal planet in Cancer. You have Mercury in Cancer.
Oh.
So, and in the 3rd house too.
Okay.
So Mercury is a planet of communication and logical thinking. So that is just meaning that your communication and thinking is filtered through the lens of emotion.
Yes. Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. And in the 3rd house too. So
3rd house is,
3rd house is like the house of like siblings and close relationships, like family relationships, as well as like community, like local community. It's pretty interesting because of your friends that are, that have that. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. So, so that's interesting.
That is interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that's actually a good thing to have like friends in that sign, or friends. So when you have Mercury in Cancer, then you want to know, where are your other, Gemini / Mercurial aspects. So so it's just something to look at. You have a very like complicated chart going on. Like you have lots of stuff, lots of different lines and aspects. You have like basically a planet in almost every single house except for the 10th house or the 11th house of Pisces.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you have everything in it. I know. My Cancer is
complicated.
Saturn is in my Cancer Cancer house.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well. Yes, so we are honoring Cancer season, and we are doing our Cancer challenge this month, everybody. It's called the EQ challenge, or emotional quotient, and it's about creating connection and using triggers as our teachers. So this one is a lot. It was great, but it's a lot to do.
Yes.
So before we begin, we evaluate our support system by making a list of everyone that we interact with: friends, coworkers, family, etc. We recognize who is supportive, empowering, inspiring versus those in our life that are not. And then we spend 5 days reaching out or checking in with at least one friend that falls into that supportive category, and one family member per day. And it can be different person or the same person every day, to checking in for support. So creating this family outside of our biological family is important for emotional health and feeling safety and well-being. So that's what we did for 5 days, right?
Yes. So, and I want to say that there are things online like an EQ challenge, emotional quotient challenge. And ever since, I think it's just been recent when I was reading about it, that the emotional intelligence, this emotional quotient, this EQ thing is a fairly new thing to be valued and to be recognized and acknowledged in like our society.
Yeah.
It's always been IQ, right? It's always been thinking.
Exactly.
It's always about how smart your brain is. So I took a few of these EQ challenges. I've done them before, and they're pretty extensive. Mm-hmm. And so one of them that I took, it was like, let me just read you the results. It was pretty insane. Oh my gosh. And we can totally, X this out of the podcast, edit this out of the podcast if we need to. But I just want to read to you. Oh, I wish I had it available for me right now. It was pretty insane because I feel like I work really hard on emotional intelligence. I don't think that something that necessarily comes supernatural to me, which is exactly my Saturn in Cancer. So Saturn is the planet of restrictions and boundaries. And so, that being in Cancer just means that I have like a slight like restriction, at least the way that I interpret it is that I have, there's some boundaries and restrictions when it comes to me being an emotional person, like being really emotional and nurturing. So I think I've said before, like I really have to work on it. Like I really have to practice it. I can't find the exact thing that I got, but it was pretty low. My EQ.
Oh, interesting.
It was really low, and what it said was pretty terrible. I almost cried.
Oh my gosh.
What does it say? Oh, here it goes. Okay. I say, first of all, I misspelled my name. It says, congratulations, Kumni. You have completed the EQ test. EQ of Kumni is 60. You are pretty cold and rarely concerned about what others think. Thanks to the cold, that helps you make decisions more assertively, but sometimes it can upset other people, even though you do not mean to.
Oh my gosh.
So my EQ score is 60.
Oh, wow. Out of 100?
I don't know. Yes, I guess so. I don't even know what the thing is. I was like, I mean, this is a super basic test, obviously. I'm not going to take it too much to heart, but it's like one of those things, like something can only hurt you if you also kind of believe it yourself.
Right.
And I do kind of believe it myself because I really, really want to work on it.
Yeah.
I want to be, I don't want to be cold.
Right.
I don't want to be insensitive.
Right.
I don't want to,
because I would not see that. Like, I don't see that in you.
I don't see that in me either, but other people see it in me, or I've been told that by other people, and I've been trying to acknowledge it and, take it in as like something to look at.
Right.
So it's definitely a trigger for me because it's like not just like told that, like really, really accused of it in like hurtful ways. And so that's one of the hard things too, is because when it's not your intention to hurt people's feelings and you end up doing that, or it's not your intention to come across as insensitive, then, and you end up coming across that way, then, it's super hard because it's like, okay, got to do more work on that.
Yeah.
I think I told you when I overheard Tiger talking to her friends and they're like, is your mom sensitive? Because she's very sensitive, and they're talking about their sensitivity levels. And she was just like, no, my mom is not sensitive. Not at all. Da, da, da. I was like,
gosh.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm not a super sensitive person, but
yeah.
But I feel like I
feel like you are. I know.
Like I try.
Yeah, you definitely do. I feel like you're so loving
you,
and
Laura.
understanding. No, honestly. So I feel like it's strange when you hear things from people. But I get that. I feel it's hard when you're misunderstood, because for me, growing up, I was very shy and very introverted. So people took that as like I was disinterested or kind of stuck up. And that was my trigger. I was like, that's not what it is at all.
Right.
So it's hard when
I
feel
know.
misinterpreted like
I know.
that.
Well, like last night was the last night of our retreat, and at the very end of the closing, we did. Everybody passed a rose to the person next to them, and just said something like they noticed about them, said something that they loved, or that they were inspired by, or just an observation that they noticed that was really positive. And the person who gave me the rose, somebody I had not known before the retreat, but ended up really being feeling connected to, said the first thing that they said was they thought that I was really a compassionate person.
Oh,
and I was like, am I? I think I am. I was like, oh, that's interesting to be acknowledged and recognized as that. And I feel like I'll always remember that.
Exactly.
I'll be like, okay, I have to remember that. I am a compassionate person. I am coming from a good place. It's just maybe the delivery.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or people that sometimes it's the people that are closest to you that like can be most triggering, I think, with that, kind of recognition. Yes. So yeah.
Totally. So anyways, yeah.
So, all right. So for 5 days, we're reaching out to one family member and one supportive friend. And it can be anything. There's some suggestions here on different things to do. So doing something for someone just for them without wanting anything in return. Number 2 could be let the trigger be your teacher. So find the story or narrative behind your negative emotions or triggers, especially with people that you're close to and mean a lot to you. And then we can kind of talk about that, what to do as you go through that. Taking on a challenging conversation, maybe it's long overdue or a current situation that's come up. Expressing that painful emotion appropriately using I statements and use feeling words, not blaming or non-reactive. And then another suggestion is get others' perspectives and use criticism to grow. Practice not taking anything personally, no matter how it is delivered. Seek honest feedback and take it all in as positive information, noticing emotional reactions and overriding it. So, I'm totally curious about how your weeks or how your days went with reaching out. What was your Monday like?
Well, okay, but first of all, from the beginning, when you're supposed to evaluate your support system, it was like, that's a really interesting practice just in itself, because obviously we want to eventually eliminate the people who are not supportive.
Yes.
And sometimes don't recognize that until we actually really look at it that way.
Yes.
Right?
That felt really good to do.
Did you feel like there were people that were...
Because, everybody I listed, at least that is in like my day-to-day mostly, is someone who's supportive.
Oh, good.
So I didn't really find that there was, I definitely have people like that in my life, but I tend to try to minimize the amount of time I spend interacting with them. So,
create like a boundary.
Yeah. So that felt affirming.
Yeah. Totally. I've done this practice before as far as eliminating or being able to acknowledge like who's supportive and who's not. And I feel like I successfully over the years have chosen to move away from the people who seem to be energetically draining. And even sometimes it's not even like permanently. Maybe it's just taking like a few months off, or even sometimes it's a few years, like I have a really good friend that one of my oldest friends in LA. And there have been times when our relationship definitely became toxic and we just needed to have like a couple years space, but we've been able to come together knowing that both of us have changed, and things are different.
Right.
So it's nice to have the common history, which is what I really like about maintaining old friends. Yeah. But then it's also nice to see that you can grow into new people and have new, healthier relationships too.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
knowing that those relationships can change over time, I think is one thing that really helped me. And also, I tend to think of like, I had this analogy once from a mentor of a target. So it's like the people closest to the target, like the people that are closest to you are in the center of the target. It might not be that many people, maybe just a handful of people.
Yeah.
But then as you grow and evolve, like you might have to move some people out to farther rungs because they just don't align as much. It doesn't mean that you have to completely eliminate them from your life. You just might not talk to them as much, or just wish them a happy birthday or whatever. But they're not in your day-to-day life as much. So
But is that a conscious choice? It's a conscious choice because it doesn't feel supportive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Or aligned. Right.
Yeah. It doesn't feel aligned. It feels, it feels like I don't feel affirmed, or it just doesn't feel like a healthy, affirming relationship anymore. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So. I know.
So.
Okay. So you want me to tell you? So the first person that I have been reaching out to as far as trying to on a more regular basis is my older brother, because we are dealing with figuring out what to do with our mom as far as her transition from living independently to kind of needing a little bit more support. And she's so it's this decision with an aging parent as far as, do you let them stay in their home that they really are attached to and want to be in, even though it might be somewhat dangerous and isolating and lonely for them?
Yeah.
Or do we really try to push for her moving into a community that we think that she'll be much happier in, because her friends are there, there's activities, there's engagement, there's community, there's we think that it will lift her out of like somewhat of a depression that she's in. So it's been very bonding because me and him have been having to work at this thing together. And also because since he is the one that's closest to her physically, it's been very bonding as far as I have understood his feeling like that he needs to make all the decisions because he's the one that's there. Like the responsibility is just on his shoulders. And it's been nice just to be able to support him and to show him that he's not alone and that I can come out and like really help, when I'm there for a solid amount of time. And then we can continue to work on, figuring it out together when I'm not there. So that's been really interesting. Another person that I've been really reaching out to regularly, that's a family member that I haven't had very much contact with, and it is with the same situation with my mom as her younger sister, which is my aunt who lives in South Carolina, and I literally have not talked to her in decades, like so long. But she's gotten much closer to my mom. She's much younger than my mom, and she's also very experienced in elder care. So she has been concerned and then has like brought me into the loop and then has brought my brother into the loop, and we've all been kind of working on it together. And it's just so amazing how sometimes a family crisis, well, I think it's all the time, a family crisis can help. It's not necessarily a crisis at the moment, but we're trying to prevent a crisis. Right. But coming together when there's a need, a need within the family. Yeah. So this is one of my things about family as far as, because I don't live close to family, and we felt that very starkly when we had Tiger Lily, because if you don't have family support when you have a baby, you spend a fortune on babysitters and nannies, or you just have to like not work. Yeah. Because you don't necessarily, there's daycares and things like that, but that's not until when they're much older. So it was like a real struggle. I did not realize the value of family until I first, after having Tiger, then going home and being with my mom and being with my brother and all of his kids and my younger brother's kids. It's like, oh, I can leave her with them and feel totally safe and still, it was a whole different level of support that I had no experience with because we'd been doing it on our own out here. Right. So this is another book that I read just recently. It was, I forget the name of the book, but it was recommended by Channing Nicholas, who's a super famous astrologer. And it was about how important it is to build community and to build families outside of your family of origin. Yeah. And it was a story. It was all these multiple different short stories and essays about all these different unconventional families, anywhere from two platonic women who both had babies but were recently divorced and decided to move in together and to support each other while they worked, so you don't have to get a babysitter if you have your friend living with you, helping you with your kid, while you go to work, and vice versa. And different things like communal living situations where everybody comes together and like it's like a village that supports and raises the kids, and the kids have like multiple aunts and uncles that are non-related just because they're a close-knit community, or scenarios where you move in with a platonic friend and you guys both help raise each other's kids together, like really inspiring, interesting stories. And it was like, sometimes you think about who is it that I would call if I was in the hospital and I needed my, dog to be, taken to the vet or something, emergency situations like that, and it's like, you would really have to think, like, would it be your neighbor? Would it be your friend? Would it be, a significant other? Or what if you didn't have a significant other, really, then, and how important it is, especially as we get older and we have different needs, to have that kind of like family, in place, people who know all of your emergency numbers, know like information that you might keep in your safe deposit box, or like just like certain things that like only like they have a list of, like one of the examples in that book was that I realized that I had given more personal information to my dog sitter while I was on vacation than any of my friends had.
Oh, that's
you know,
so
as
funny.
far as
Yeah.
like emergency
Yeah.
contacts,
Right.
extra spare keys, you know,
Yeah.
how to, you know, who to call, you
Yeah.
know, like family contacts and things like that.
Yeah.
And so when you start thinking about that, it's like no wonder why we all feel so alone and isolated or so needy for like a traditional relationship or partnership and feel so stuck in one when we want to get out of it, you know, because
Yeah.
you kind of feel like, wow, well, who's going to
gonna
be
be?
there for me? Who's my, what is the person? Emergency contact,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that, you know, we went through with, my breakup with JB, with Tiger's dad, as far as co-parenting. It's like, there's no like clear separation, you know, there's no clear breakup. It's like, we're always going to be family,
Yes.
you know? So, because we have a daughter and we're going
Yeah.
to raise her forever together.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you got to be my emergency contact and you got to know all this information and we got to still always be family, you know,
Yeah.
like no matter what.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So I think that type of, thing became very, very more clearly important while I was thinking about this challenge and about how my friends are definitely like family and thinking about Tiger looking like me trusting her with those friends.
Yeah.
Almost like godparents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that because that's something I didn't even think about when I moved out to LA.
Yeah.
I moved out here in 2014 and I'd always lived around family or around friends that like, you know, you grow up together, you just know each other's personal histories and it's just a given that they're there for you.
Yeah.
And when I moved out here, I remember thinking I knew two people and it was like, there was one day I remember I wanted to do something so bad and neither of them were available to do it. So I was like, what do I do? Like, I'm here by myself. Like it just, I felt so lonely in that moment. That was like sort of the moment where it hit me like, oh, this is what it's like when you're in a brand new city where you don't know anybody. And then it's like, you have to be intentional with like getting yourself out there and making friends and, creating your own community or joining a community in some way. But that has helped me, I think, get to this list of people where I can look at it and say, like, I feel like these are supportive people because these are people in my adult life in this stage of where I've become more authentic in my own self that are true to like who I am. You know, it's a real community of people that I can love and trust and know that they have my best interest at heart. So that's taken it's taken 8 years to develop, but it's also, it feels good to know that it's like, it feels really, really aligned.
Yeah.
So, that feels good. Even though at times I definitely have my moments where, I think even in COVID, just, you know, living on my own, not being in a relationship,
Everybody.
it's just like, it really was isolating and felt lonely. And I was like, gosh, if anything happened to me, like, would anybody know? Like,
Yeah.
it's a little terrifying.
I know. That's the situation with my mom too. It's like,
Yeah.
she sometimes goes with weeks without seeing anybody.
Oh gosh.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so I feel like that's, you know, recognizing this community through this challenge, I think was such a huge thing too.
Yeah.
But then also like the family stuff, my family is all back in the Midwest and I realized like, I don't talk to them that much. I talk to my mom, but I don't really talk to anybody else in my family, like on a consistent basis, which that was really eye-opening through this too.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that especially out in LA, everybody's, you know, from somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's like, but I also feel like there's a reason why we've probably all moved away from our families and that definitely like your family of origin, sometimes we hang on too much to some of those toxic relationships and that's why it's so important to cultivate, you know, some sort of more chosen family.
Yes.
Because I mean, that's just the thing with, you know, family sometimes, not only does it bring up triggers, but it also, you feel like sometimes you don't have the flexibility and the freedom to be who you are now because they keep you stuck in what they remember you as being.
Yep.
And it starts to feel so uncomfortable when you go back into that because you feel like you need to either prove that you're not the same, or you fall back into the role of that same dynamic. And neither of those are healthy.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's hard to be authentic sometimes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say throughout the week, I actually reached out to my brother too.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, I had to reach out to him just for something else. A friend of his, her mother had passed away. So I wanted to get the information to contact her. But anyway, so that just sort of opened the door to reach out and talk and catch up about, life and what was going on. And it was nice because it wasn't like, I noticed that I was just like, hey, can you send me the address? And then he opened it up and was like, how are you? Like he genuinely was, like, well, how are you doing?
Yeah.
So that was good to like, and then I was like, okay, instead of just being like, I'm great, thanks. I took the time to like, this was all through text, but just intentionally like write about what was going on in my life. Sharing. Yes. Yes. And then he responded back and shared stuff that was going on. So that felt great.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That was really great.
Yeah. I think that's always, it's always great because you want to, the same feeling of like you feeling like, they might like look at you like stuck in a box of like a certain role or something. It's like, you also don't want them to think that you think that way about them. It's like once you give somebody else the space and the permission to be who they are now, and you can kind of see and accept it, then it's like giving them permission to let them do the same for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. I found it much easier to reach out to friends throughout the week versus family, but I had more variety, I'll say, with friends that I reached out to. So were there any conversations you want to go through day by day, or do you just want to talk through some of the conversations?
Yeah, maybe we can talk through the conversations that came up. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Did you have any triggers that were your teachers?
I did actually. So I called my mom and dad. We usually catch up at least once a week.
That's good.
And it was great. We had a good catch up, but we were talking about all kinds of things with like traveling and figuring out like, all these plans about going home in August for my cousin's wedding. And then I'm thinking about moving and all these things. And and I am too. I like to plan things. I'm getting a little bit better about sort of living in the moment and kind of trusting things. But I do notice that when people are like, what are you doing? Have you booked your plane ticket yet? The prices are going up for the flights. Trigger. It's just like, I know. So it's much pressure.
I know. They're anxious and then they're trying to put their anxiety onto you. Yes.
So that was a bit challenging for me. So I took it in, where I was just like, okay, I feel like I have this story where I have to have everything like figured out, be super diligent. Like that was kind of like going back into an old pattern of like just needing to prepare everything, and like plan months in advance. Now I feel like I'm getting maybe not much, a little bit better about like just kind of being in the flow and like trusting that like when it feels right, or because I don't even want to look at flight prices right now. I'm not looking at anything. I just feel like there's too many unknowns right now to make plans of specific dates or all the things. So that was sort of my trigger for sure. So I noticed that I got a little bit angry, a little bit like,
were your parents like that with you, like growing up? Obviously, like you said, your mom was very much like trying to have you make a plan.
I think they like to have like the plan in place for sure.
I feel like it's our parents' generation who are very much like into making plans. Yes. Like a little bit controlling with the plans.
Yeah. Yeah. So then if I didn't have anything, or I was just like, I don't know, it was just being more laid back about it. Yeah. That wasn't always met with, positivity.
Right.
So, right. So it was, that was a challenge growing up. Now that I think about it. Yeah.
I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
I know.
So,
Okay.
What about
So,
you?
well, obviously, I've already talked about this, but the trigger, okay. So so I was just trying to think, because I have this trigger with like people who, think that I'm insensitive. And so remember we talked about the EQ thing. So I was trying to think about like, where does that come from and when was the first time I felt that way? And it definitely comes from my mom. And not to say, I love, obviously I love my mom. But, they say triggers and like traumas are not like there's the big T and then there's like the little T. And that actually, I was just listening to Gabor Mate podcast about this. Where there is the big T, there is like those intense like violations or abuse or tragedies that you witness or things that happen, to you for sure, as you're growing up that are significant. But really the biggest trauma that most of us are have gone through are the little T traumas of those day-to-day moments when you're told the same thing like over and over again, or those day-to-day moments where where you weren't heard or you were misunderstood or where you were labeled as something, or maybe there's just some sort of need that was just consistently unmet, right? So those are like those little T's that actually really, really affect our, like we develop these behaviors to adapt to them once we realize that's something that's not available to us. And so we have these maladaptive behaviors that are ingrained into our unconscious that stay there, into our adult life.
Yeah.
Right. And then just kind of control the background narrative of everything until we actually do some shadow work and look at it. And so, so I remember there was one moment in I would think I was maybe like 11 or 12, but I remember, but maybe it was even younger because I remember even younger instances where it was totally coming from an unconscious place from my mom, as far as an insecure place, that she obviously just something that she, was criticized for or already had like some sort of aspect of it was that I was insensitive and manipulative. And I remember overhearing, she said it to me a few times. And then I remember overhearing her telling my dad that. And my dad and I had a really close relationship. In fact, probably closer than he did with my brothers. And right before my parents got divorced, I think probably closer than he did with my mom. So I remember her like saying it, not like maliciously, but kind of in a complaining way, in a way of like, asserting like what she needed from my dad that she wasn't getting because I was like in the way of being like really like manipulative manipulative with him and insensitive to her. Right. So, so that was like a big link back. And so, so once it's super empowering when you know these things, when you recognize these things. That's why it's like when you look at a trigger, you feel the feeling and then you think about when was your first memory of feeling that feeling. And then you can go back and do that wounded inner child work and heal it, right? And really heal it. So I'm still in the process of healing it because I think it takes like more than just like a couple of sessions, but yeah. And so now I've grown up into being this adult that is like, maybe because my Saturn is in Cancer, maybe because I'm a Virgo sun and Capricorn moon, maybe it's just because I have a more masculine energy, which is kind of what my therapist said, or I come across like, it's more masculine as far as like more assertive or more like, saying things with less feeling and more, action oriented or something. But yeah, I've come across that like several times in different personal relationships. And it's like a real trigger for me because I don't feel like it's an unconscious thing at the moment. I feel like it's something that I really, really work on. So I have to figure out like how much of it is actually true and what it is that I could like actually work on as far as like maybe, yes, I could work on building more of my empathy muscle. And at the same time, there's some things that you just have to let go because it's like,
it's who you are.
I mean, it's kind of who I am to a certain extent as far as it would be nice to not be assumed that I'm coming from a place of like in a place that's intentionally insensitive, you know, but it's definitely like a karma that I'm trying to like work on, you know? And so, so let your triggers be your teachers. So every time I get triggered by somebody saying that or implying that, I have to remember that that is definitely like a sensitive spot for me to be criticized on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know. It's tough. It is tough for sure.
Who knows? I don't know about that insensitivity thing. But yeah, so that's a Cancer thing. That's like a super Cancer thing about being like super, super sensitive and super over personalizing things. And me with a Capricorn moon, it's like, I just don't take anything personally. And then therefore I don't think anything that I say should be taken personally.
So funny.
So which doesn't always work.
I know someone that is also very similar to that. Okay. So what about doing something for someone just for them without wanting anything in return? So,
that's super important.
Super important. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I did, my mom had broken both her wrists a couple months ago.
Oh yeah. You told me that.
And, she was still like, it took all this time. I think this was like 3 months or so ago that it happened. She, had to have 2 surgeries on one wrist. So, I just sent her a card, which I never do, but I just thought, you know, I'll just send her a card to let her know that I'm thinking of her. And, you know, she has always expressed like how grateful she was to all her friends that showed up for her and my dad, like for helping her because she could barely do anything for all that time. She couldn't drive. She couldn't do really anything.
It was her right wrist?
It was both wrists.
Oh, both wrists. Oh my goodness.
So I just, you know, I let her know. I really thought about like, gosh, she deserves it because I feel like she takes care of so many people. And I think it just showed just how many people love her. And she's just she's a sensitive woman too. And she's just always been so good. And she sends me so many cards all the time, just like expressing her feelings and how much she, you know, how proud she is of me and all these things. So I feel like I've never like done that back for her. So it was something that I just wanted her to recognize too, because I think they're sort of the generation too where it's like hard for them to ask for help. Even though I know it's hard for me to ask for help, but it's like she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe all these people are doing all this stuff for me. You know, it's kind of Midwest too. Like, oh, you don't have to do that.
No, my mom is the same way. Yeah, exactly.
So
also they're the generation that loves to get cards and letters in the mail.
Exactly.
I know. You just reminded me that I should do that for my mom for sure. She loves to go get the mail.
Oh,
it's like a daily outing.
I know. It is so fun though. I notice when you get cards in the mail that it's like, oh, like a little present. Something not just like an advertisement.
Super cute is that Ink Cards app where you can use any photo from your phone and make it into a postcard and then it mails it out right from the app.
Oh, that's so neat.
It's super cute.
You just like write your message in the app?
Yep. And you can pick a template for the photo, like out of all the gazillion, they have tons of different cards and templates.
Yeah.
And then, and you can just have them send it from the app.
Wow.
And you know how they love to get pictures.
Oh gosh. Yes.
I always want a picture. And it's not like texting a picture or emailing a picture is not the same as like one they can put on their fridge.
Exactly.
Yes?
It'll go on the fridge. Yes.
So funny. Yeah. So I've recently been criticized for this, but I really believe that when you do stuff for somebody, like anything for anybody, I'm trying to think of a scenario where you would really expect something in return. I'm going to stand by this. It's like, I think that when you do something for somebody, whether it's a card, whether it's a gift, whether it's a gesture, whether it is even a huge gesture, that there should be absolutely no expectation of anything in return unless it is clearly communicated that you're expecting something in return, right? So if somebody gives you a card, for instance, like a letter or a note, and they want a response, they're expecting a response, their well-being, their sense of well-being is based on whether or not you're going to respond, then that needs to be clearly communicated. It needs to be saying like, I would love for you to read this card and this letter. I would love for you to respond and let me know what you think. I would love or I would like a response even, or even say, I am expecting a response. Like that would be a clear communication being like, okay, I'm going to read this card and letter and I'm going to definitely respond right after I read it, or think about a response, but definitely respond, like shortly after.
Yeah. If
that were to happen, as far as like a clear understanding that there was an expectation of a response within a certain time frame, that should be communicated,
right?
Like an assignment, let's say, it's like, this is the assignment, I'm going to give you till the end of the day and I need you to respond by this time.
Yeah. Right.
Otherwise, how can you expect, I guess there's like that unknown, kind of like feeling that you should do, but I don't think you should have that gray area because I think there should be enough self-awareness to know that I'm only going to feel good if I know that they read it and I know that they appreciated it, then if you know that that's what you need, which I think that there's a lack of self-awareness there with some people who don't know that, then you should just say it.
Yeah.
And then that would clear up any, confusion as to what was I supposed to do? Like, was I supposed to respond? Did I know that there was a time frame for it? But I don't know. Not everybody thinks that way. Not everybody thinks that giving something shouldn't be there, that a response is, necessary. Not everybody thinks that. I
think it depends, to be honest. Like, I feel like, I don't know. I'm thinking like if I my cousin's getting married. And so I sent him and his fiance like a shower gift. And they sent me a thank you note. Like, I feel like I don't have to respond to the thank you note. Like, thank you for right. Like,
but were you expecting a thank you note?
No.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I guess I wasn't. I'm trying to think like I feel like from my experience of other weddings, yes, I've always gotten a thank you note, but I didn't give them a gift thinking like, oh, they better send me a thank you note for this.
Right. Oh, I better be acknowledged for this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I better be appreciated for this.
Right. Yeah. Right. But I guess I've had times when I haven't gotten like a thank you or something. And I have thought like, that's interesting.
Maybe like, did they get it? Like that kind of a thing?
Yeah. Like, that's kind of weird, but.
I know. I guess I can see that. I can see like wondering if something was received.
Yeah. Yeah. But
then I would say I would probably ask if they received it.
Yeah.
If I was wondering.
Right.
Right. And then I don't know. I guess I could see it where somebody's like, I feel like I've heard a story before where somebody was like, they sent something and then they didn't know if it was received or not. And then they said, and then they asked, and then the other party said, yes, they received it, but they didn't expand on that.
Yeah.
So then the person who gave it might think like, oh, they didn't like it or they were offended by it or something,
it's true. I could totally see that happening. Like me thinking that for sure. Yeah.
But only if it's like there's something controversial with the thing that you gave, right?
I don't know. No, I would overthink it. I'd be like, oh my God, I offended them. Or like,
I don't know. So I guess there is a gray area with that.
There definitely is.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, I just didn't think there was any gray. For me, I don't expect anything in return as far as acknowledgement or a note or anything back or a thank you or appreciation. I just feel like, unless it's something like let's say like, I don't know, like just from like being a business person, like let's say like you're giving somebody a raise or something, like you want like maybe that's like a gesture of appreciation as far as it doesn't even need to be like, a verbal or like a note or like a thank you or anything, but just like maybe just like showing appreciation in a different way. Like maybe like, working a little bit harder or like doing something a little outside of your job description. I mean, just something that's like a little bit, just an acknowledgement like, oh, okay, I'm being appreciated. So therefore, I feel more willing to give in this scenario,
Right. Right.
But something very natural and organic and definitely not expected.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's about expectation. I don't think you should expect it. I don't think you should feel sad or upset, if you don't get that acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of like a codependent thing?
It might be. I don't know. I don't know if I'm looking at it in a way that I feel like if someone chooses to like go out of their way and do something nice for you, then they shouldn't ask for
anything in return.
But I do think it's a kind gesture to just acknowledge it from the other person.
Absolutely.
That's what I
yes.
think. Yeah.
I think it's a kind gesture. I think it is definitely something that's appropriate and maybe even, a cultural norm, a societal norm.
Yeah.
But I think that if it doesn't happen, it doesn't mean that it should necessarily make you feel super bad.
Right.
But who knows? Because I'm not the most sensitive person, so I wouldn't know if I should be saying somebody should be feeling bad or not.
That's so funny because we're like the opposite then, because I feel like I'm like super sensitive.
You're super sensitive. Yeah. I know. I think I attract really sensitive people to me, but and I feel like I'm sensitive.
You do. I do not think of you as an insensitive person.
But also, I feel like I feel things deeply too.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm attuned. Like I have some of that sensitivity. But yeah, I mean, I mean, it's definitely something that I can continue to work on. And that's all I can do is continue to look at it and continue to work on it. And that's the only thing that triggers are just, like fingers that are pointing to like a certain thing that you can like look at deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Like a blind spot.
Right.
Otherwise it wouldn't be a trigger.
Exactly. You just like acknowledge it and move on.
Right. Or even not acknowledge it at all and just be okay.
Just exactly. Oh gosh.
I know.
Interesting. Okay, so was yours? Did you do something for someone last week?
I can't remember if I did anything specific.
Okay. What about? I didn't do this one. Taking on a challenging conversation.
Oh, I feel like I do this one on a weekly basis.
Really?
I mean, okay, so I will just talk about this as far as I think this is really important to be able to have the courage to do.
Yes.
And so, especially for people who have avoidant tendencies like me, for instance, and to not procrastinate or brush under the rug conversations or issues that need to be addressed and addressed in a timely manner. As far as like, I used to be one of those that would just procrastinate the conversation until the point where it's like not even like anything that is, relevant.
Right. Exactly. It's like that thing that happened a month ago.
I know. It's like, what are you talking about? Or are you bringing up some old baggage, or like bringing stuff up that's like so much in the past that there's no reason to be bringing it up again other than like digging up old stuff. So it's probably more like super important to really just dig into that stuff in the moment or like as close to the moment as possible so that you don't have to dredge it up again.
Yes. Yep.
So with this new relationship that I've been in, it seems like lately, because there have been so much distance and separation just from us being in separate places from traveling, that the challenging conversations have been over the phone. And my practice with this new scenario is to not procrastinate and not brush things under the rug and to embark on these, mega kind of challenging personal issues, an attempt to like work it out, an attempt to clear it up and an attempt to not have it, to resolve it so that you can move forward, So I have this vision, I have this idealized vision of what a relationship is as far as things are guaranteed to come up, but to like have the things come up, both learn something about it, learn something about each other from it, resolve it, and then be able to move on and not have to really deal with that again. Now, obviously that's ideal because those type of things, especially if they're deeply ingrained, are going to come up again and again. And so there will be multiple opportunities to be able to resolve it. And that's one of the key things that I really want to be able to master in a personal or partnership or relationship is conflict resolution, being able to tackle conflicts head on and then resolve it, and through the resolution process become closer and stronger. And then the same thing for the next one, become closer and stronger. And so, I think this is one of the things that my therapist pointed out that was different from me and from like other people that I might be like working with or interacting with, is that being somebody who has had the incredible stress and anxiety of like owning a business and like needing to keep it afloat no matter what, because of the amount of pressure and responsibility that is on you, that like when things come up, which always do, then you just go into fix it mode. You just go into problem solve it, get it done, what needs to happen to figure that out, to resolve it. Like there's really no like emotion in it.
That makes sense.
So sometimes I have, and they say that's kind of like the masculine way of like dealing with issues, it's like some of us just want to be heard and other people want to be like, I'm going to fix that for you. And I'm like that. I'm like, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to look at that and I'm going to fix it. And then we're going to move on and we're not going to like, have any feelings about it because why?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But, it's totally not like the case. And so much of like what I'm really trying to embark on is like doing things that are not my normal unconscious pattern or tendency, because that unconscious pattern or tendency has not always worked in the past as far as within certain scenarios. So that pattern or tendency to just be the fix-it person as far as business is concerned totally works and is fine. But when it comes to relationships and especially like even with my daughter who's really, really sensitive, it totally doesn't work. Yeah. So I have to really stretch myself to be out of my comfort zone and be more of an emotionally available person, attuned person, empathetic person, just to deal with those things so that, especially when it comes to my daughter, because I'm trying to model the behavior and also help her as she's going through her own emotional development, to know, to hopefully not hold on to too much, stuff, hopefully not too many, lowercase t traumas. Happening and like know how to like be emotionally aware, know how to speak up for her needs and all these things without feeling like she's going to be, like there's going to be some sort of backlash for that, you know? So I don't know if we need to get into the specifics of the challenging conversations, but I definitely know that I really have tried to tackle these conversations head on, and tackling is probably not the best word because we don't want to be like in a fighting or a competition, type of a mode, which is exactly is the spiral down into unresolved issues that never get resolved.
Yes.
So, but it's hard. It's freaking challenging. It is challenging. And it's not, and it's time consuming and it's energy draining. Yeah. But in the end, hopefully it should be worth it. Yeah. Because you do have to do that work to even have the possibility of becoming closer. Yes. Of going deeper.
Yeah. I feel like I have almost sort of like overly corrected these like communications, like having the difficult conversations, because I used to never do it. I would hold it all in and I would, have so much resentment, and then I would just like blow up at my partner with all this stuff. And now I feel like in this new dating relationship that I'm in, like I sort of like all of even the little things, like just slight little things I've started communicating. And it's almost been like he said to me, he almost feels like he can't do anything right then. So I'm like, I feel like I'm trying to learn the balance of like being sensitive, but also knowing like what is my stuff to just like, I have to work through. Yes. And not having to like communicate everything necessarily. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, because I even felt like you almost feel silly sometimes with the stuff that you bring up or, that I brought up. I was like, okay, I didn't need to communicate that. Like that just felt like maybe a little bit too much. So
I think that's the type of person that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
That communicates just the things that just like that. I don't know if that was necessary.
You don't need to communicate everything.
But at the same time, you don't want to hold things in.
Exactly.
So it's finding that balance.
It is. It's finding the balance. And I think that's where we're at right now too.
Yeah. Well, that Mercury in Cancer, it's like your communication is all emotional all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. There is like but I think the balance is found by self-work and self-awareness. Yeah. And knowing that the more aware you are of what you need and your tendencies to look for it outside of yourself versus it's kind of like, what is it that this is a need that I have, but is it something that I can first fulfill for myself within?
Yeah.
Before I present it to this other person as like something that they need to help me deal with, and so that's like the balance. The tricky part is when you need the other person to do something, to say something, or to acknowledge something in order for you to feel okay.
Good. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's definitely some scenarios, especially with intimate relationships, there's some scenarios where that's definitely a need. And that's like, I think that's like the exchange that needs to happen. Like you need to take care of each other's needs as much as best as you can.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of scenarios, and I think I am kind of on the extreme end of this as far as like this kind of hyper autonomy or hyper independence, where it's like you just feel like you can just like deal with it all on your own, and just be like, I'm going to figure this out on my own. And so then it's kind of like closing off. So it's like that tricky balance between knowing what you need and what you can give to yourself versus what you can ask for that's appropriate that you need from your partner.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning that now.
It's learning. Yeah. It's such a learning process.
And it's, you learn through the quote mistakes almost.
Exactly.
Where it just feels icky because anyway.
Yeah.
It was tricky a couple weeks ago with that. So
yeah, I think it's like a constant trickiness, especially with Cancer energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So moving on. Last one was getting others' perspective and using criticism to grow. So
this is a super tricky one because taking out the emotional reaction from somebody's feedback sometimes needs to be like a real clear set intention for yourself before you embark on that conversation. So because if it comes out of the blue sometimes when you're just like, wait, I wasn't looking or I wasn't prepared for this type of criticism and feedback, So think about those like conversations where, somebody says something to you that's like kind of critical, and depending on what kind of mood you're in or how you're feeling at that moment or where your mind was at, it can't always be received. Like you can't always receive it.
Right.
But if you go into a conversation like really intentional, being like, I am going to ask this person specific feedback or criticism about something and really just, whatever they say, not take anything personally and really try to find like the nuggets and the gems of what they're saying. Like really trying to not take things personally is like a real practice. Yeah. So I guess I've practiced this because I'm pretty good at it, but there's some people that I'm not good at it. And like one of them is like with my daughter because it's such a sensitive thing because it's like you just want to be like the best mom and you want to be like the most nurturing and you want to be, I don't know. You want them to feel loved, and you want them to feel like there's so much identity in being a mother and, and feeling like you can nurture and take care of somebody, Yeah. So my daughter being like embarking on this like teenage years, like she can say some things that are like really, really hurtful sometimes,
Yeah.
I mean, imagine I think I did that for my parents. Yeah. And so now when we get into like any type of back and forth about something, usually it's about me complaining about her complaining or something like that. And just having a moment, it was right after some of her dance competitions where she was like had been super stressed out. Whereas like, okay, what do I need to do like right now for you to feel like you can be completely emotionally safe and express what you need to feel without me taking any of it personally, no matter what the language, because at that age, I mean, most people don't have the language unless you are super practiced in it. And so this time she was 11, she just turned 12. In her 11-year-old vocabulary, I mean, she basically like, told me I was like the worst mom in the world. Because I never, things like, I mean, she uses the words like never and always, which obviously we're not supposed to do, but, I never listened to her. There's always something, she's always doing something wrong. She's afraid to like, say things sometimes because she's afraid that I'm going to get mad at her. All of those things that are so hard to hear as a parent because that's not what you want, especially if you felt that way as a kid yourself, which I totally did. I mean, I felt like I couldn't totally express myself or speak up for myself. I felt like there's so many things I couldn't say because my mom would get mad and I was so afraid of my mom getting mad. So all of the things she was basically saying were things that I totally felt when I was her age too with my mom.
Right. Yeah.
So hearing that obviously is really hard, but if you can get into a space where I'm just going to hear the criticism and take it in as feedback without beating myself up or getting overly emotional, is a really powerful practice because not only can you not be emotional enough to really mirror them and show them that you hear them, because sometimes it's just about being heard. Like, I just think like if my mom did that for me, that would have alleviated so much, Yeah. So I know like just a practice of being like, listen, you are just going to tell me everything that you are feeling right now, everything that you think about me, and I'm not going to get mad. I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to say anything. And I really just want you to just like tell me everything. Yeah. As if you were talking to, or as if you're writing in a diary, or as if you're like talking to, your best friend, just tell me everything that you think about me and what you wished I was like, and what is all of the things, that you think are wrong. I'm here, I'm open, I'm just gonna like let you like lay into me. And it was super, it was a super helpful practice. Yeah. Because I think once you set the intention in your mind that you're not gonna take anything personally and you're just gonna look for the nuggets of feedback and criticism that you can work on, then that changes everything. Yeah. That changes everything, because then it's like just saying like I'm not going to take something personally is going to help you not take it personally. Right. And then of course it's like in a relationship, it's the refinement of the language that needs to happen, so that because you're not always going to have the sensibility to be like, I'm not going to take things personally when things come up, you know, like sometimes it's just like you're just reacting versus responding. Right. So
that's really interesting. My experience with this was I didn't intentionally go into a conversation like thinking that this was going to come up, but it did, where my friend gave me feedback that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but it was super informative, and I understood what he was saying, and it helped me look at some stuff inside of myself. But I was talking to a friend who I hadn't talked to in a while last week, and we were just getting caught up on life, and I was telling him about something that I was like pretty excited about. He's like, it's really interesting. He's like, because your tone is saying one thing, like your words are saying one thing, but your tone is saying something else. Like he thought, like I was saying how excited I was about something, but he's like, you don't, like your tone doesn't really match with what you're saying.
Oh, interesting. So, had you ever heard that before?
No. Oh. But then I like looked back at like certain interactions. I was like, I could totally see that. And I think what it is like I'm almost a little bit scared of what I was talking about, and I'm scared to like let myself like show too much emotion of being too like my words are saying I'm excited, but I'm like almost afraid to let myself go there inside of myself because I don't know if it's like a vulnerable thing, because I'm like, well, what if this other thing that I'm talking about that I'm so excited about doesn't end up working out? Then like, then I'll feel, like maybe my ego is bruised or whatever.
So you're kind of
So
thinking,
like,
you're saying, yeah, I'm excited, but in the back of my mind, you're like, yeah, if it happens or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, so there's like this conflicting thing that's going on inside of me.
Yeah.
Like I am really excited, but I don't want to show that I'm like,
You don't want to be too excited.
don't want to be too excited.
Because you're not too sure it's going to happen.
Right. Exactly. So it is coming through in my tone then. He's like,
Yeah.
you don't sound excited. He's like, you're saying you're excited, but you don't sound like you're excited. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why I don't let myself like go there, like go really there.
Right.
So
I wonder
it's
why.
interesting.
Do you know why? Is it the foreboding joy where you
think
you're
so.
waiting for the other shoe to
Other
drop?
shoe to drop. That has been coming up for me more and more recently, where it's just like, I'm not letting good things in because I'm so terrified that like something bad is going to happen or something.
First.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It's like, don't let yourself get too happy because, you know, the other shoe's going to drop at some point. So yes, I think it definitely has something to do with that. So that brought up that for me.
Yeah.
That I really need to look at. So,
That's really interesting because I think everybody has it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I think it's like one of the ways, I don't know what Brene Brown says. I can't remember what her remedy was for that. But I feel like just one of the things that's really helped me is to know that feeling something. Okay, first of all, the foreboding joy can actually be sabotaging, right?
Yes, exactly.
But also, and secondly, that just to know that feeling excitement about something or feeling happy about something doesn't need to mean anything else than enjoying that energy of that feeling.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to put your brain in it. You don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to be like a thought about it. It can just be like whatever idea, whatever thought that initiated the feeling, like just to feel that feeling, allow yourself to feel that feeling. And then like, even if it's just like for a split moment or a longer moment, without like anything else.
That's it.
Without worry, without anxiousness, without anything. Like at least try to practice doing that for like a few minutes and then just expand it through like maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30, maybe all day, you know?
Yeah.
So that, because sometimes the forebodingness can sabotage the
That's what
thing
it
for
feels
happening,
like
which is what happens when you say something and the tone is not aligned and the other person notices it, then it turns into like, oh,
then they're like, wait,
she's not excited.
Yes.
So maybe we shouldn't do it.
Yep.
And so, which justifies your feeling of it not happening.
Yep, exactly. Oh my gosh.
Don't we just get in our own way?
We totally get in our own way. Gosh. I know. It's like, oh, just let it in. Just let it in.
Or just be present with it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with fantasizing sometimes.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah. I think just being so unpracticed with joy, like the positive emotions.
Yeah.
I think are confusing sometimes. Like, oh my gosh, could it really be really good? Could I really be really happy?
Right. Or another thing is like feeling guilty about feeling happy about something.
Yes. Or showing it, like expressing it, like living it out loud that you're so happy. Like what will be the repercussions of that?
Yeah. That was one of the things that we did on the retreat that was really interesting was like somebody brought up we had a mindfulness teacher come in and she led a mindful hike and then people paired off. And one of the things was talking about bragging, about like, why don't we just let each other brag for a moment, you know? Like, and then we like went around and like talked about like something to brag about, something about that, like, we're going to just brag about, we're just going to talk about like that we just really feel like we're proud of about ourselves, you know? And that how much we don't let ourselves do that, you know, cause you don't want to come across all of the different things that society has conditioned us to think about people who, you know, brag too much or whatever.
Right.
And so then we've all like overcorrected and feel like we can't say anything good about ourselves without sounding and looking like an egotistical like a-hole or something.
Right.
But we need to like step back into that and start becoming more comfortable with it.
Exactly.
Right. Which first begins by looking at our aversion to it, you know, like our judgment of other people and then our judgment of ourselves. Yeah.
I know.
No, so crazy.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Well, any final notes about this challenge? This was a challenging challenge, everybody.
It was a challenging challenge for sure.
Yeah.
But eye-opening.
And really, really important, I think, in the whole self-growth process and personal development process, and will contribute so greatly to our personal relationships. I mean, that's the thing about Cancer energy and Cancer themes is about family and community, and cultivating, like, really, I mean, especially now when we're in such like an individualistic society and everything is so, kind of are isolated and compartmentalized. Like, it's like we have to make a genuine effort to prioritize building community and building relationships, strong, stable relationships. Otherwise, we do risk, isolation and depression and all the things that come up against it. I mean, there's just so many studies about how, what do they call it in prison? Isolation, or what is when they're just,
like solitary confinement?
Yeah, solitary confinement is so detrimental on their mental health. Yeah. And then there's another study that I just heard on a podcast about how the loneliest people are men in their 60s. Yeah. Because traditionally, they're the ones that always only focus so much on career. And so their lives and their some community and friends were built around their career and work, so that when they retire, maybe if they're married, then what happens is they put all of the pressure on their spouse to like be that community for them. Or if they're single, then they're completely isolated. Yeah. And so, and I see that with my mom as far as like just being super hyper independent and growing old in like real, not just COVID, but like real, like self-induced isolation, of like being the person that doesn't need anybody, that doesn't want to ask for anything, not even from her kids. It's like, I have to call, I'm like, why didn't you call me when this happened? Like when she fell and got a concussion. She's like, oh, I didn't want, I'm like, I need to know these things, but it's like turns into a thing where it's like, I have to call. I'm the one that has to call to make sure, versus like expecting her to call when she needs something, because she won't. Right. Exactly. I know. So, but I think just to be super, super aware of how important community connection is.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back here next month with our Leo challenge.
Yes. Yay. Happy Cancer season.
Happy Cancer season.
Good luck.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.